Hello everyone and welcome to Reed's Honors Biology course. I will be the instructor this year. My name is Mr. Klapp and I want to give you a quick introduction to the course, who I am and what's going to be expected for you throughout the year. I know it's a bizarre year and there's a lot of weird expectations, but I think we can have a really neat course. I think we have a good plan, and so it should go well as long as everybody's on board. So to begin with, first of all, being honest, I looked at my pictures from last year and these are photos of my students working really hard together and doing some cool activities that we've done in the past. As we well know, we're in a bit of a different world right now, and so we're not going to be interacting with each other in the same way that one might in a normal interactive classroom, but we're going to make the best of it. I think there's some good things ahead of us. It's just going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. All right, so to begin with, just give you a little bit of my background. I have a BS in Wildlife Biology from UC Davis and a master's from UNR in Education Psychology. Got a good bit of education in biology, spent a lot of time looking at birds, so it's good stuff for me. This is my 17th year teaching. I feel like I'm getting old. I've actually been teaching for 10 years outside of Reed. So this is my 7th year here at Reed. Prior to that, I was in middle school, first at O'Brien Middle School and then at DePoli. I'm also the head wrestling coach here at Reed High School. We have both men's and women's programs and we're recruiting all the time. So we'd love to have boys and girls come out for us. If you have questions, I'll talk about it till the end of time. So we'd love to have you wrestling for us. All right, so about our class. Obviously we have some differences in terms of scheduling this year. It's going to be complicated at first, but I really do think it's something we can get a hang of and things will go pretty well for us. I'm going to start by talking about sort of what the schedule looks like for an A group student, and you may have gone over this in your other classes, but I think it's still good to go over it because it's darn confusing. So for A group students, you're going to have 2 consecutive days of biology curriculum, 1 day in school followed by 1 day at home, and they're each around 100 minutes. So you're getting a lot of content. It's just spread out over 2 days. Only one of them at school and the second one at home. I think one of the biggest things we're going to have to get used to is the idea that those 100 minutes that you're not at school are not like they were in the spring and not like they have been in the past, where it's sort of a little bit of time and it's optional. If you want to be successful in this course, you're going to have to be dedicating about 100 minutes to me on every one of those days that you're supposed to be enrolled in my class, but you're not actually in school. So after you have those 2 consecutive days, so for our very first week, it'll be Monday and Tuesday. Monday you'll be in class with me, and then Tuesday you'll be doing 100 minutes of work for me outside of class. After that, you move on to the other part of your schedule where you'll have courses that aren't biology. And so for those 2 days, you'll have a day of instruction in class and then a day of instruction out of class. But again, those are days you aren't expected to work on bio. So 2 days in a row on bio and then 2 days in a row where you're not working on biology. Then we wrap back around and you get 2 more days of me and the pattern continues. So you have 2 days of biology, 1 in class and 1 out. 2 days without biology, and then you do it again. So it's kind of crunched up in these little clumps in different parts of the week. Now, they may be at the beginning of the week, they may be in the middle, they may split from the Friday to Monday, but it'll be 2 days of me and then 2 days without biology. For those of you in the B group, it's a little bit more complicated. B group folks, you'll start with your day of instruction at home. Then you'll have your 2 days of non-biology. So 1 day at home with 100 minutes to work on stuff. Then you'll have 2 days of non-biology courses. Then you'll have your day of in-class instruction from biology. So for the most part, you're going to take your in-class instruction for biology, then you do your 2 other days off, and then you're going to be applying it at home. It's a little bit more challenging to kind of link those things up for those of you on a B schedule. I think you'll get used to it really fast, but initially it might be a bit of a challenge. One of the things that we're providing to try and make sure that you guys have the resources you need at home is I will be conducting online optional office hours. These will be daily from 10:30 to 11:30 on every weekday except Wednesday. Our schedule's a little different on Wednesdays, so it makes it hard to do it then. But we will have those, so if you need to get a hold of me, I'll put the computer out, and actually while I'm conducting class, if you still need help while you're at home, those options will be available to you. So we're trying to make it as easy as we can for you to get the instructional support you need. We know some of you are electing to do a distance program right now. If we move to full-time distance, I'm hoping that you guys will have the opportunity to stay doing the curriculum that we're providing in class. And we want to do it very similar to the way it would be online. Would be in the hybrid model. You're going to pretty much mimic the A group. You'll have 2 days of biology at home. Granted, you're not coming into class, but I still expect those 2 days. And then you have 2 days with those other courses, and you'll just kind of work your way between those. So it'll be very similar to an A group model, and we ask that you kind of follow along with that. So that's the plan for those of you on full-time distance learning. If the entire class moves to distance learning in the future, we'll deal with that when we get to it. But it'll probably be, or hopefully be, something like this model. And again, we will continue to have those optional daily Zoom meetings for everybody. The one difference for those of you on a distance setup is we also expect that you guys check in with us by face at least once a week. The Zoom office hours are optional, but for those of you doing full-time distance learning, we're also expecting a Zoom check-in on Mondays at 10 a.m. So for the few that are currently on distance learning, and that number may change, we expect you guys to check in with us. All right. Just a little bit about how we're going to run this course. With the hybrid model and with distance learning and with A and B days and not a whole lot of time in class, we've decided to go with an engagement model. And so this engagement model involves these relatively long projects where you'll be working on a project or a series of projects that all get put together in one engagement. And for our first engagement, we'll talk about it in just a second, it's about a month long. And you can expect that length for most of our engagements throughout the year. So you'll work on an engagement for about a month, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. You'll have products that you're supposed to do throughout the engagement, and eventually you'll turn that in as part of your portfolio. When you're done with that, we'll move on to the next unit. Throughout the engagement, you're also expected to create daily goals to let us know what you're working on a given day. We'll set up a plan at the beginning of the engagement, and then we'll make sure that we're following those daily goals. There are also some mini tasks within the engagement. There are things that are due throughout the engagement and not at the end, like the portfolio. For example, in your portfolio, you might be expected to put together a video discussing cellular respiration, whereas one of your tasks might be to comment on something that on a video that I made regarding photosynthesis or something. So it might be something that's relatively short and generally has applications for further down the line in the engagement. So tasks, small projects throughout the project. The engagement is the entire project, and your portfolio is what you turn in at the end. That's generally the layout. We also will take tests as we come up to the ends of units, but for the most part, it's going to be a lot of independent learning and a lot of working on these longer term projects. To give you an idea of sort of what the first engagement is going to be honest, our first engagement isn't a lot of biology. The focus is on making sure that we can be effective hybrid learners. So for our orientation engagement, you're going to be expected to do mainly 4 large parts that are all put into that portfolio. To begin with, you're going to put in an introduction video where you tell us a little bit about yourself, and this will be done in the first couple days in school. From there, you'll move on to a PowerPoint on an animal of your choosing, and we'll get to that and explain some of that for you. And then you'll upload that PowerPoint in a way that we can see it, much like this one that you're watching right now. You'll also be developing an animation, whether you choose to do a stop motion animation or use Animaker to actually make an animated digital production. It's up to you, but this is a tool that we'll be using throughout the year, and we want to make sure that you're familiar with it. So you'll be doing an animation. And then finally, you'll be generating a how-to video, likely with some software called Screencast-O-Matic, but maybe something on your own to explain to us how you went through a process. We find that when doing a lot of digital learning, documenting the process that you went through is really important. And so that's going to be something that we're going to learn how to do in particular. I think it's a good format, and I think this is something that'll work well for us once we develop these skills early on in the year. Okay, so for our course, just give you an idea of what curriculum we're going to be discussing this year. To begin with, like we already mentioned, we're going to focus our first engagement on hybrid distance learning tools and norms. We need to know how to learn from a distance environment. We didn't have a chance to learn that before when we got kind of thrust into it, but we'll be doing that to start the year. So for the first month or so, you can be expecting how to use distance learning. From there, we're going to move on to talk about ecology, how living things interact with their environments. We'll be doing research projects on this. where you learn about food pyramids and different biomes, and you talk about different organisms, how they interact, and how they affect one another. Excuse me. That again should take us about a month, little month and a half. From there, we're going to move on to talk about nature of science and cell processes. When we do these 2 units together, we'll actually be doing a lot of cooking. I'll send you home with some sourdough starter so you can make sourdough bread. If you want, we can look at yogurts and vinegars and different things that are actually biological or chemical processes that reinforce some of our ideas that we're going to be going over about energy and matter transfer at a microscopic level. In the meantime, we'll be experimenting with different recipes. So we learn about the nature of science. What happens when you knead the bread twice as long, or if you don't add salt, or if you bake it at a higher temperature for a shorter amount of time. We'll learn how those things have effects, and we'll talk about the nature of the scientific process as we go through it. So it should be fun. I think it's a unique opportunity to talk about cooking and use your home environment as well as the school environment. So we're going to go forward with that. As we move, that should pretty much take us through the first semester. From there, we may still be in a distance environment, hybrid environment, maybe full-time together. We just don't know. But our first unit back will be genetics, and we'll be spending most of our genetics unit breeding salamanders. I have a population of axolotl salamanders that we'll be breeding and learning about their genetics and why they do and don't look like their parents. It's a fun unit. Obviously, we'll be talking about other things as well, but the focus will be on that salamander breeding and development and genetics of salamanders. We'll also, in our honors course, be reading Genome, which is a little bit old of a book. It was published just after 2000, but it talks about the human genome and just gives us a really good framework for genetics. This will work really well in a distance environment. It also works just fine if we're in person. So reading Genome, breeding salamanders. From genetics, we'll move on to talk about evolution. Hopefully we'll be in class, and if we are, we'll do a robot competition where we learn about adaptations and evolution while experimenting with Lego robots. We'll talk about salamander evolution and how their lives may change throughout time, continuing our discussion of the salamanders that we started breeding in class the previous unit. And finally, we'll also be reading another book. In this case, it's Jonathan Weiner's Beak of the Finch, which is a great book discussing primarily a study that was conducted on finches in the Galapagos, but also studies of evolution throughout the world. So this is a great book too, and I think really cements home our understanding of evolution. And finally, we'll end our year with a discussion of human impact and how we impact the environment. This, of course, is something that's been big in our hearts right now, how we interact with viruses and how we interact with bacteria and how we interact with other members of the world. We'll certainly spend some time talking about that and how we can impact and change our impact going forward. We have a lot of unique routines and expectations this year. So there's some challenges, obviously, with COVID and our responsibilities to stay safe. Entering and exiting the classroom, for those of you on a distance learning platform, this isn't a concern. But for those of you that are working with us in school some of the time, we expect that when you come in, you're putting your stuff down and then going to one of the 3 sinks we have in class, washing your hands, making sure your space is clean, and then staying to yourselves and focusing on your material and what you're doing. We won't be sharing materials in class for the most part, and you'll be expected to maintain social distancing, keep your mask on, and get your things cleaned up. When you leave our classes, again, you'll be expected to clean things up. And these things may change as the district or the school changes policies, but the focus is, of course, on social distancing and cleanliness as you enter and exit class. Should we share any equipment, there will be a focus on cleaning it, both before and after use. So if we get to the point where we're using microscopes, we're going to put a lot of energy into making sure that they're safe and that we can use them from one student to the next. Maybe it's the next day or something, but we'll be doing some cleaning there as well. So again, mostly focused on your own work, social distancing, and staying clean and safe. For turning in work, nearly all of the work, at least in the beginning of the year, is going to be submitted online. For those of you who don't have access to computers or phones, we'll talk about alternatives as we go forward in those unique situations, but generally your work will be submitted to us in an online format. Mostly using Microsoft Teams, You'll be expected to put your name and your class number on assignments like the good old days, but generally you're just going to click turned in that Teams dialog box and it'll work just fine. We're going to go over this as part of our orientation engagement if you're not familiar with it, but it is an important part of what's going on. Some of the tasks that we work on will be due weekly and they'll be due on Sunday nights. So there will be this first week several tasks that will be expected by Sunday night. They'll be graded. They'll be graded mostly on completion and they'll be pretty small tasks as part of a larger whole. And then of course your portfolio will be turned in at the end of any given engagement. And that'll also be submitted on Teams. We're happy to work with you if you aren't able to do things digitally. We have some resources in this class that should help you, but for the most part, the expectation will be that you're able to access Teams on your own and then use that to submit your work. Phone use. My feeling on phone use is, especially in these days, we need your phones. They're the best computers we have in our classrooms, and although it's not an expectation that you have a phone, if you do have one, we'll be allowing you to use it appropriately in class. We'll talk about some of the things that are appropriate and some that are not for phone use. I'm actually going to supply chargers. So if you come in with a phone that's not completely charged, as long as you bring your cable, you'll be able to charge your phone during class so you can walk in with a fully charged phone that you've been using throughout class. Bathrooms. We'll talk about bathroom breaks and the details as those start coming out with regards to COVID responses. But as far as I'm generally concerned, keep your interactions with your peers to a minimum. Make sure you're keeping social distancing and use the bathroom when you need to. Again, keeping social distancing and COVID restrictions in account. Supplies. This list is different than it has been in years past for me. Number one, I know it's not a normal thing for us in school, but if you have your own personal laptop, it would be my recommendation that you bring it to class. You're going to be a lot more effective on a laptop than you will on your phone, and this is going to be a way for you to access our material the best you can. Again, not a requirement. They're not being provided by the school district, but if you have a personal laptop, I would recommend bringing that to school. I think that'd be a great tool for you. Otherwise, the expectation is that you're there to use with your phone. Again, if you don't have either of these, we have some iPads in class that you can use during class time, and we'll work out ways for you to connect with us when you're in a distance learning environment. We do expect you to download several apps to work with in class. Remind is an app that we'll be using to do some communication. I like the push-in text alerts that they give on Remind, and I think you'll find those useful to you as well. Teams, obviously, this is going to be fundamentally what we're using to do most of our work, so we'll get familiar with that in the first couple of days. We're also going to be making some stop motion videos, so you're expected to download the free app Stop Motion Studio. Also, Screencast-O-Matic. This will be good for our how-to videos, as well as generating any videos where you're talking to your audience and also sharing your screen. There's a freeware version of it. If you want to buy more, I think it's $20 a year or something like that to get a version where you can do a lot of editing, but it's up to you, but at least the free version is what we expect. Animaker, this will help us in union with Stop Motion Studio to come up with some cool animations and graphics. You're also expected to have the traditional stuff, a notebook and paper, and we also like these 4-color clicky pens where they have a black, a green, a blue, and a red color, so we can change that as we go through our note taking. If you can get one of those will help you out when we're actually taking notes. But again, most of our stuff is going to be online, anticipating potentially even more distance learning, and if not, at least being able to manage in and out of the classroom. We are not going to be a textbook heavy class. We do have textbooks available in the library if you need to check one out, but quite frankly, most of that material is available on your phone in one format or another, and is certainly available on computers when you go home or if you have a laptop. So we're not going to be using textbooks. The best resources that you have if you're struggling with the material are our office hours. You can check in with us daily and talk about any problems that you're having. I will respond to individual Remind texts almost any hour of the day, so that's a way you can communicate with me as well. Email is a useful function if you have concerns about your grade, concerns about things that haven't gotten turned in, and it's too long or too detailed for a Remind text. That's a resource to you as well. I'm also available every day before and after school, so you can come in a little bit before school. School's open at 6:45 in the morning, and I'm usually here by 6:45 or 7, so you have a chance to come in and see me as well. And of course, your peers are still resources. Yes, you need to be about 6 feet away from them, but they're still good folks for you, and they'll be able to help you in terms of getting your curriculum done. So we have a few values that we base our year on for this class. I'm not a teacher that really demands a whole lot of little nitpicky ideas. The point is, you're here to learn, and that is your job. We've had a very interesting last 6 months, and those 6 months maybe have reset some of our expectations in terms of work ethic. But if you want to be successful, you need to do your job. You need to show up, and when you're here, you need to get what you need to get done. You're going to have a plan. You need to accomplish that plan. You need to follow your plan and get your portfolios done on time. When you're not here, and this might be the hardest part, you have 100 minutes of time that you owe me and that you owe this class to get your work done. If you're not using that time wisely, you're going to have trouble being successful in this class. It's not like the good old days where you didn't have to do any homework at all. It's not homework, it's home learning. You need to spend some of your time getting stuff done in a distance environment. I'll support you, but you need to do your work. So number one, first and foremost, please do your job. Work hard in this class, and you'll be fine. Second, this is a challenging curriculum. Biology is a challenging course. I pride myself on offering a challenging class that's both challenging and hopefully entertaining and interesting, but it's not easy. You're going to have times when you struggle like you didn't in middle school and like you haven't in years past. How you respond to struggle is what defines you as a person. If you're not struggling, you're not learning. If I'm making you do worksheets that are really easy, that don't challenge you intellectually, you're not going to get smarter. You're not going to walk out of my class a better person. And those are my goals. So you will be struggling in this class. You will be confused in this class. You will be challenged in this class in terms of the work that you're asked to do and the quality that we expect from you. That said, that's what you need to do in order to learn. And we hope you have that opportunity. Finally, many of you who are in honors classes are very, very bright individuals. Some of you maybe struggle a little bit more academically. That said, how smart you are, what your ability is, rarely is the thing that determines your success. You're going to be successful in this class if you put in the work. You may have to put in more work than your peers. Maybe you put in more work because you want to do a better job than anybody else. Maybe you got to put in more work to do as good a job as someone else. But your effort is what's going to determine how successful you are. If you work hard, you'll do well. If you don't, you're going to struggle. There's so much independent learning in this model with hybrid learning that if you don't put the time in, it's going to be a struggle for you. If you do, you're going to have a good experience. I want this to be a good class. I know that we're going to have some challenges, but we're also going to have some unique opportunities that we just don't have in a normal year. We can take advantage of it, we can learn new skills, but we got to push ourselves. And so I expect you to be dialed in and ready to go. That's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, you can of course either send me a direct remind, you can email me, we can have conversations in office hours. These are things that we can go through going forward. I'm looking forward to this year. Hopefully at some point we're all in the class at one time, but for now I think we got a pretty good plan and I think we're going to learn a lot. So welcome to biology, welcome to Reed.